I call to order the Homewood Board of Zoning Adjustments meeting. Can we have roll call, please?
All right. Mr. Wortley.
Here.
Mr. Alsabrook.
Here.
Mr. Perkel.
Here.
Ms. Hand.
Here.
Mr. Foley. Mr. Roberts.
Here.
And Mr. Gear. There's quorum present.
Great. Since we have no minutes, we're going to skip that, and there are no communications from me, and Matthew's not here. So before we move on, anyone here who is here for the 115 Riviera Road, that has been moved to next month at the request of the owner.
Right, that's the chairman said that case is being carried over to the September the 1st meeting. That's the first Tuesday in September. And the meeting, again, will be held at 6 o'clock in these chambers. So just for those members of the audience who were here to hear that case, note that it'll be carried over to September 1st. Thank you.
So moving on to new business, we are going to start with SV 220801, 1528 Salter Road.
My name is
please-
Elton Douthit.
Sorry. Yeah, can you please write your name and your address
Yes,
on the
ma'am.
form below? Thank you.
I'm Elton Douthit. My address is 601 Grove Street. All right. At 1528 Salter Road, we're asking for a continuance of a nonconformity. He's got an existing covered porch that's 9.3 feet off the property line, and we're wanting to extend it out 6 feet, so continue that nonconformity on back. Pretty self-explanatory on that one.
Great, this is a
Yep.
public hearing. If you're here to make a comment, you can step forward. Since there's no one here, let's move to the next part.
You'll close the public hearing.
Yeah, we'll close the public part.
So it looks like the part you're adding on the back is extending the nonconformity, but just, I can't see that dimension, but,
It's a six
okay, it's
feet out.
six,
Yes,
you're
sir.
adding 6 feet of length, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then 10 feet by 10 on the other side, that's all within the setback.
Yes, sir. That's all uncovered as well.
Oh, it's uncovered, okay.
Yeah.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'll move that we take a vote on SV 22-08-01.
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Wortley.
Yes.
Mr. Alsabrook.
Yes.
Mr. Perkel.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
And Ms. Hand.
Yes. You have 180 days to submit your permit.
All right. Thank y'all.
Next, we're moving on to SV 220802 114 Haven Court, or Havenwood Court.
Hey, my name is Jared Bussey. I'm with Architectural Cooperative. My address is 1604 28th Avenue South, and I'm the architect on the project. We are requesting a variance to maintain existing non-conforming conditions at this property. As you can tell from the survey, the plot plan, it's an extremely wedge-shaped lot. It's at the end of an existing cul-de-sac, so it's got a very narrow front and a wide back, but not very deep at all. What the owner would like to do is to construct a second-story addition on top of the structure. In doing so, there are 3 corners that are currently non-conforming that we would also be building on top of, making the addition non-conforming. There's currently a small covering over the front door, which we would like to rebuild, not making it any deeper than it is now, but it would be something new, and so that's been added for the front setback. So there is a small little side rear addition, but it's gonna comply with the setbacks on the main level. So really, we're not making the footprint, we're not changing the footprint, certainly as it relates to the second-story addition. We just want to be able to maintain what's there now. Building within the buildable area would be really constrictive because of, again, the shape of the lot. And we think, we got a rendering up there and some pictures just to show you what we have in mind. Yeah. One more thing I'll mention, because of the shape of the lot, we actually take the lot width at the house, not at the street. And so when you take the lot width at the house, it's over that 55-foot width. So now we're at 10-foot side setbacks instead of 5 and 9. So that just exacerbates the problem of being non-conforming, if that makes sense. Okay.
Great, we'll open this part to the public. If you have anything to say, you can come up to the podium and sign in with your name and address. Yeah, come on ahead. Make sure to sign in.
My name is Mary Altsmith. I live at 103 Bonita Drive, and I've lived in Homewood since 1979. I'm here representing my daughter, Anna Altstam, who lives at 113 Havenwood Court. She sent a letter to all of you. I hope you have that and you've read it. Havenwood Court is a charming cul-de-sac of mostly one-story residences that has thus far been spared the overbuilding seen in other parts of Homewood. Many of the homes have been remodeled to enlarge bedrooms, to redo kitchens, and to add bathrooms. All have been in keeping with the charm of this neighborhood and this street. 114 Havenwood could be remodeled as a one-story house with an enlarged kitchen and a second bathroom in keeping with the other houses that are on the street. A perfect entry-level home for a single person or couple. A business LLC has bought 114 Havenwood Court and now wishes to build a 3,000 square foot home, almost 2.5 stories, on what has to be one of the smallest lots in Homewood. And you have seen many small lots in Homewood, but this has to be one of the smallest. The LLC owner wants us to believe that this large second floor is going to be supported by a 1947 frame house, which is less than 1,200 square feet. The second floor is going to have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a rec room, and a laundry study. Every piece of the proposed construction will require such substantial changes to the framing and foundation of the current house that it is unlikely that any of the original structure will remain at the end. Given this fact, there's no reason to grandfather in setbacks that do not meet current Homewood rules. This business LLC says these setbacks will be a hardship on his new construction. When this business bought the house, they knew what the lot was like and what its limitations were. The real hardship here is what the adjacent neighbors will have to endure, having a 2.5 story home looming over them, and one house particularly, both 115 and 112 are going to be affected by this. At least ask this business to adhere to current setback laws. As Anna, my daughter, told you in her letter, these standards are there to protect other homeowners, our neighbors, the charm of our city, and the streetscapes. Please uphold these standards. I thank you for your attention and your service to Homewood.
Thank you. Can you sign in, ma'am? Excuse me, ma'am? Could you sign your name and address, please? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Feel free to come up. And if you could sign in with your name and address, that would be great.
My name is Brandon Eastlick. I live at 115 Havenwood. So looking at the house right next door to the left. My intention is not at all to stop anyone from building or anything like that. It's probably more educational for me, and I also have no idea how all this stuff works. It's probably questions you can answer, and I'll probably direct them towards you. My concern and some other neighbors' concerns primarily are building a house this large. You're expecting a certain size family to move in there. Parking is already relatively limited, especially if you're gonna have guests park on the street. It's a cul-de-sac, but if you've never been over there, it's a tiny cul-de-sac. I mean, I drive an F-150 and it's just enough for my turning radius to turn around and go. Backing out of my driveway or whatever is not really a problem, but you bring in one car that's doing any sort of construction, survey, anything like that, that's a big problem. Not a major deal, but I'm in healthcare. When I have a patient at 7 a.m., that means I have to be there at 6:45, so if I'm like trying to find people to move cars and things over however long the construction takes, that's a concern for me. So my question from that would be, what are the proposed parking ideas, plans? Is there going to be, the common Homewood driveway up, parking, space right there type thing? And then also educate me, please, on what all this means. If looking at the house, like I said, I'm to the left, and from what I'm kind of understanding based on the writing, is the current rules are to not build anything within 10 feet of the property line, left or right. You're proposing to take that down a little bit. And on my side, you're proposing to take it from 10 to 6 feet, right? So you'll come 4 feet towards us.
You said you're on the left,
I'm on the left if you're looking at the house, yeah.
so currently you've got, that's the closest point, that's 4.2. So we go from, it's 5.8 now, we would maintain that 5.8, but the variance ask is a 4.2 foot variance.
So you won't
on
come
that side.
any closer.
No, the footprint is not changing at all. We're having to ask for a variance because we're building something new on top, and that
Okay.
new stuff either has to comply or we've got to get a variance in order to keep these corners. So nothing's getting any bigger. The only thing getting bigger is this
Right off
closet,
the back.
but it's compliant on the main level.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I mean, if you've been to the house, which I obviously have, there's no way you can come any closer, because like, my trash lid
Right.
can almost hit the house when I flip it back to throw some trash in. So that was my main question, and then any proposed parking plans you guys have, and any plans on how you're gonna control construction flow and keeping no one, it's already kind of like a neighborly thing to where nobody really parks on the cul-de-sac. I've already broken that once, sorry, but not having a bunch of traffic through there.
We're gonna be able to get our 2 required spots off the street, like on the property that's required. As far as construction activity, that's gonna be, we can't guarantee there's not gonna be any more than 2 trucks there at one time. And there's gonna be a dumpster in the yard, and there's gonna be laborers coming and going. I can't speak for the contractor, but it wouldn't be any more significant than any other renovation you might see in Homewood. I understand, with the traffic circle, with the cul-de-sac, it makes things a little more challenging, but steps can certainly be taken to alleviate as much of that as they can. I mean, we can
Okay.
certainly pass that along, that that's a big concern.
So no closer on the left or the right?
No, we're not changing
You're building
anything
up.
about the footprint. The second story is gonna stack above, and it's, what we tried to do, and, I'm not sure
I saw the picture.
the first one's still here. I mean, and I appreciate the first lady's comments. I live in Homewood myself, and, you know, we're not just gonna be stacking, you know, just a sandwich of doubling the square footage and then a roof on top. We're trying to work with the scale and do, it's really a story and a half kind of look, with the roof actually starts on the first floor. The roof structure starts here, and so things are fit within dormers and cropped gables to really, to try to pinch that second story in, so it's not just this huge
Yeah,
behemoth.
skyscraper too.
So, and we're 6 feet below the maximum height. So because the lot's a certain width at the house, which gives us a 10 and 10, we can build a much taller house. We'd be allowed to. We've kept it down to try to minimize it.
I'm definitely not against, you know, a nice looking house right there.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure wasn't getting any closer to us. I mean, somebody at some point, whether it's you or not, will be doing construction at that house. So that's a growing pain, part of us living there. But those are my questions, and I mean, it will be 2 spots, but you got to think, you know, 2 spots, 2 parents. Who knows how old the kids, if they move into there, then you're instantly on the street. So that was kind of the biggest concern. Appreciate it.
Sure, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate your comments.
Good. Thank y'all.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak about this case? And now we're going to close the public section of this part. At this point, do you know how much of the first story is going to be maintained?
Well, the whole perimeter, certainly, the existing floors would be saved and reused. You know, we will, it's a really simple structure. We'll have that assessed. We'll likely have to just come underneath and kind of undergird the existing structure inside of the foundations. But, I mean, the way the house is laid out now, it's largely going to be kind of reworked on the interior. Front door stays where it is. Some more windows along the exterior, new exterior finishes. You know, we've got a mixture of lap siding and like a stained cedar shake and stained cedar beam. So we're trying to use natural materials. Again, try to keep the scale as sort of sensitive to the street and sort of the Homewood aesthetic, traditional shapes and styles that we can. I'd say that my only comment to the previous speaker, any kind of work on this house is going to require a variance. There's really no enlargement you can do to the 1,200 square foot house that's going to avoid very likely immediate. I mean, she mentioned a 1-story expansion. You can tell by the way the house sits. You know, it's all over the setbacks, and so hopefully, you know, y'all view our work as being sensitive and not overdone and reasonable for a modern family.
Have you looked at how the parking would lay out or how the driveway would lay out?
Yeah, there's a driveway there now, which we would keep, and we'd be able to stack 2 cars, kind of right in front. The driveway and sidewalk are kind of lighter gray lines on the site plan, and those could be maintained because we're not moving the front door, that front porch. That's right.
Did you guys look at just laying out a brand-new house here instead of kind of beholding yourself to the existing structure?
Well, we assessed the site and essentially, yeah, building with a new house within the buildable area, just, we couldn't get any real usable square footage. I mean, you still end up with a 2-story home of 3 bedrooms and really tight, really small spaces, likely at an angle. We would have had to have offset that rear yard angle to fit anything of a shape that's usable. And thought that, the best way forward was to use what's there, preserve those walls, preserve the foundation, and renovate instead of tearing down. I would view tearing down as a bigger negative than working with what's there. Just from a perception standpoint and just preserving what might be there and not being wasteful.
Public
I think it
hearing's
is,
closed.
yes, because the public section of this hearing is closed, unfortunately.
Can we open it back up?
What?
Fred, can we open up the public hearing?
Do you know for sure that you're gonna be able to use the first story, the existing structure, or is that just aspirational? It's in rough shape. I mean, I walked around the whole thing. I know that I'm not an architect or an
Yeah,
engineer. But
it's, yes, and we do quite a few of these kind of renovations. We do a lot of these second stories in Homewood. There may be, some studs that have some water damage and things like that, but it's rarely the walls that are the problem. So, yeah, we expect to be able to use all those wall studs. The foundation can remain. We're likely going to need to come inside of those foundation walls in the crawl space with some new structure and just underpin it. A lot of these older homes weren't designed to carry 2 stories, and so that's just a typical part of the process to reinforce those.
Based on what you're saying, it does sound like the reason you're renovating is to maximize the space and to take advantage of the current setbacks. I'm not 100% convinced that, you chose to renovate just to not be wasteful and tear it down, even by what you've said yourself.
Again, I would say the shape of the lot and the buildable area just doesn't make really anything else feasible.
Don't you think it's possible that you could have brought in 3 of the corners or 2 of the corners to alleviate some of those setbacks?
With a second story addition or with a whole new build?
With a whole new build. It's not impossible, you just can't build like a large house.
Right. Nothing is impossible. We could, the house could be shrunk and made more square, and we could have a 900 square foot footprint, 800 square foot. Likely not have any bedrooms on the main level. It just becomes really a much more vertical house at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think that's, again, not terribly useful. We see this as an improvement to what's there. What's there now is in quite bad shape, and makes it something that we hope would add to the street and the overall aesthetics and create something that's difficult to manage, manageable.
Is this going to be a spec house, and is this being built as an investment to sell, or is it being built for someone specific?
As far as I know, it's not being built for anyone specific.
I just get the impression that if that house weren't there and you just had this lot, that we'd be having, well, I- might have had a different decision ultimately on whether to buy it. It's, it's the smallest lot on a street with small lots and would have the biggest house on it. And I appreciate the efforts to try to, create the impression of a 1.5-story house. But it strikes me, and I'm just one person, that the existing structure would be used to try to take advantage of existing nonconformities as opposed to being used for practical reasons. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a lot this small. I mean, it's 5,800 square feet. It's just, it's tough. So I get the,
Yeah, I mean, so you take the current house and you take, the garage, take it out of the usable area, you're at, 1,200 feet. The house is really not in any kind of shape to be occupied, so it could be renovated and it could be, I'm not gonna argue, it could stay just the way it is, and it could be a small 3-1, 2-1 house for somebody. I don't think that, I'm not sure how usable and reasonable that is. I mean, like, it's gonna take a minimum amount of money to make this thing habitable, and you end up with something that immediately gets outgrown and it's not gonna accommodate many people. I understand your hesitancy. We're not trying to game the system or manipulate anything. There's a really tough lot with a house on it now, and we want to make it, a 4-bedroom house that's usable for families. I mean, that's our typical MO is, the 4-3 house is something that's really helpful and useful and marketable, and it's, we're not trying to manipulate things, but, to do that, it requires a second story. And so we just try to do that respectably, to not be just behemoth as it was described.
Are there any other 4-3 houses on the street that you're aware of?
I honestly don't know. I've not done a survey to answer that.
I'll move we vote on SV 22-08-02.
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Wortley,
No.
Mr. Alsabrook,
No.
Mr. Perkel,
No.
Mr. Roberts,
No.
and Ms. Hand.
No. Your request for variance has been denied.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next up, we have SV 220803 Acton Avenue, or 105 Acton Avenue. Is it you again?
Still here.
Great,
Okay.
good to see you.
Jared Bussey, I'm the architect helping out on this as well. We have an existing house on a very wide, but not terribly deep lot, not the typical 150-foot lot of Homewood. There's two asks that the owners have that they'd like to do. One is an attached screened-in porch. The other are improvements to the property in terms of paving and installing a concrete court. The issue with the existing house is that it leaves us no rear yard to place these things. We've got an existing 14.3 rear setback, so a screened-in porch certainly couldn't go there reasonably. So the first ask is doing a screen porch on the side of the home, pushed back, aligned with the existing rear of the house. And so we're requesting that the existing non-conforming condition of 14.3 be granted to do a screened-in porch off of the side there. The second is all paving. There's no structures over the court or over those stairs or over the side walls. But because it's paving, it's classified as a structure. And the ordinance does not allow structures in a side yard. Structures have to be in the rear yard, detached structures. Again, there's no real rear yard to speak of here. The only place to improve the property and put these structures in is on the side. And so we request that we be allowed in this situation to put paving in the side yard. So that, at the top left, that's the rear yard where the car is parked. Just that 14 feet. And then on the right is standing in the side yard looking at the house. So the screened-in porch would essentially come right in front of those 4 left windows. It'd be on that second level. So second level screen porch with just a patio below it. What we did, again, because they're structures, detached structures, we honored the 5 and 5 setbacks. Again, the detached structure setbacks, at least my understanding was always, these are carports, garages, apartments, structures built vertical, 3-dimensional things, not paving. So we're holding the paving off and giving a setback to the pavement. It's just I think it's an interesting way the code is written, sort of classifying paving as like having paving adhere to the same setbacks and requirements as built structures. So I tend to think there's a bigger issue of how the ordinance is written, but I think in this situation, we've just got a unique property with where the house is sited and where is there left to improve. It's really only in this one side area.
Thank you. Now we're going to open this up to the public part. If anyone from the public would like to say anything. Great. We're going to close the public section of this.
So it looks like, even with the basketball court, you're still well under the,
Yes, we
Yes,
will have
well,
no
like
issue with the lot coverage.
Right.
Yes.
No further questions from me.
well, I'll move we take a vote on SV 22-08-03.
A second.
All right. Mr. Wortley,
Yes.
Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes. You have 180 days to submit your plans for
Thank you.
permit.
I'm glad I ended on this one. Appreciate it.
I had last month.
We are moving on to SV 2208-04, 305 Dawson Drive.
Were you going to recuse yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm also recusing myself and passing it on to Mr. Robert.
I'm Neil Davis with Davis Architects, and I'm our office at 120 23rd Street South. We're representing Sanford University today and requesting a height variance for a building on the internal part of campus. This is the existing cyber gymnasium, and we're adding on an addition that is lining, it's a two-story volume lining with the lower two floors of cyber. But in putting a roof on it and everything, we're a total of 71 feet high, though we're still below the adjacent building cyber, and we're in the whole of the football field. And the second part of the variance is there's an existing scoreboard that we're proposing to relocate to the other end of the building, and it's even shorter than the addition to cyber. And that's our request today.
Good, thank you, sir. This is a public meeting. If anyone is here to speak on this case, this will be your opportunity to come forward. And seeing no one, we'll close the public portion of the case, and if you could, we'll entertain questions from the board. This is not a question, just for our consideration. This has already been, at least the plan, the final development plan has already been amended and approved by the Planning Commission, subject to, obviously, the agreement by our board to the variances.
I don't have any further questions. Looks like a great project.
I got a motion to approve SV 220804.
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Wortley,
Yes.
Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, your case passes. You have 180 days to pull your permit. And I will cede the chairpersonship back to Ms. Ham.
Thank you. Let's move on to case SV-22-08-05, 306 English Circle.
I'm David Morris. I'm the owner of 306 English Circle. And this is my youngest daughter, Pate. She decided she needed to help me.
Moral support.
Right, which I need, right? Okay, so we're requesting a variance for the addition of artificial turf in the backyard. It's It's listed as a additional structure. Actually, the intent of it is to add more permeable surface. I think maybe there was an instance where there was some turf that was installed improperly and with concrete underneath, and it caused additional runoff, whereas the actual purpose for us anyway is to increase the permeability. And I think at least 50% of the area where we're putting turf actually used to be a driveway. So we've removed the concrete, we're installing turf. It's gonna have a gravel base with water catch basins inside of it. So when turf is done correctly, it should actually, the water should actually seep through faster than it does in actual grass. So for us, the reason we're doing it is so that our children can play in the backyard without creating a mess, a muddy mess, bring a bunch of dead grass into the house after they've been outside, et cetera. So it's really just we want it for more usable backyard space for our children, like this one right here. So I appreciate you guys hearing this request.
Thank you. We'll open this up to the public. If anybody would like to say something, you can come forward to the podium.
I forgot one thing. I
Yeah.
actually have an additional letter. The Eccles, who are to our left when you're facing the front of our house, they actually hand wrote notes that they wanted to give you guys in support. So, let me show you.
Oh. Thank you. Sure, yeah.
So I think we have support letters from all of our adjacent neighbors.
If there's no one who would like to come forward, we'll close this, the public part of this section.
Yeah, we did receive additional support
Okay.
letters from several folks. I think what we've done in the past with these is, they're approved conditionally with the requirement that you provide some kind of drainage detail
Sure.
to the city
Right.
following the hearing.
And Peter Faulkner, my landscape contractor, is going to provide that upon approval before we get the permit finalized.
Yep. I move to approve SV 220805 with the condition that the city receives and approves the drainage details following the hearing.
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Wortley,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes, you have 180 days to pull your permit.
Thank you very much.
We are now moving on to SV 22-08-08116 East Edgewood Drive.
Did we skip Bonita?
Oh,
Bonita is next in order.
my mistake, I pulled that too quickly. I take that back, and now we're doing SV 22-08-06 112 Bonita Drive. Thanks.
I'm Dave Irick. I am a landscape architect with Environmental Design Studio, representing 112 Bonita. My address is 1000 Providence Park, Birmingham, Alabama. We're asking for a variance to, on a corner lot, to place a pool directly behind the house. You can see from the pie-shaped lot, Ventura is to the north, Bonita is to the right. You can see by the pie-shaped lot that we don't have the advantage of a back lot line. So we are not encroaching on any setbacks. We're beyond the side setback for an accessory structure. We are able to add this because the lot's rather large. We're able to add the pool without exceeding the maximum impervious area or the maximum area for the rear yard development. So Our request is just for permission to add a small pool behind the house. I think it's in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. There's immediately, within just a few blocks, 7 or 8 pools on corner lots within the neighborhood. And you should have received several letters in support.
Right. We did receive 3 letters of support, and they were forwarded to you, but all of them were in support of this project.
Yes. Any questions?
Oh, wonderful. We'll move on to the public part of this hearing. Is there anyone from the public who would like to say something? Now we'll close it, and we'll take questions from the board.
Is there currently a privacy fence?
Yes, on Ventura, there's a 6-foot masonry wall on Ventura Avenue, and then also on Bonita, there's about a 6-foot, I mean, it gets a little taller where the gate is, privacy wall. To the south, there is a 50-foot Birmingham Waterworks easement. So the pool is 56 to 60 feet from the closest residence. So we will, of course, put a fence in to meet the pool code, at the time of construction.
Any additional questions? I move to approve SV 220806.
Second?
All right. Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Wortley,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes, your request for variance has been approved, and you have 180 days to pull your permit.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're back to SV 22-08-08, English Circle. I'm so bad. 116 East Edgewood Drive. It's a little late for me.
I am William Siegel. I'm with Twin Construction. I live at 1707 Shades Park Drive in Homewood. We're here to request a lot coverage variance for a new construction project. The property, and I think if y'all have driven by there, there's a vacant lot right now. The Reidingers have actually purchased 65 feet of that, so they're on kind of the left section of that. The owner adjacent to the right. Well, it's where the house was, and about an additional 15 feet to the right of the driveway. So that is the lot that we're talking about. We're requesting a lot coverage variance of 15%, and then a rear coverage looks to be about 40% for the ask for a pool and additional parking to be in the back. And I know parking was something that got talked about today, but parking, Homewood does not allow any options for permeable pavers. So, the parking does take up a significant portion of this because of the long driveway and the turnaround in the back for the carport. I know the Reidingers will probably speak to this, but that's one of the things that they want to address, being a family of 5, having off-street parking on this busier than average property. So, I know the engineered system that we have planned for, that's part of our submittal. That engineered plan attached will capture 42% or more of the surface water on the property. So as part of this variance, we're planning to have the engineer come out, inspect all the additional stuff that we do. So essentially right now, we've got 23% of lot coverage before the house was torn down. 23% of lot coverage. When we're done with everything, we will only impact 23% of the lot coverage. Everything that we're adding is going to get taken care of by this engineered system. Does that make sense? For the additional surface water. Okay. I guess Josh and Whitney, if y'all want to introduce yourselves.
Good evening. My name is Josh Ridinger. This is my wife, Whitney. We live at 133 East Edgewood Drive, so we're across the street and down 4 houses. We've lived in Homewood for 13 years and raising our 3 kids. We love our street, we love our neighborhood, very close with all of our neighbors. And you guys should have received letters from all the adjacent property owners that we spoke with. Actually, one of them just sent an email just a moment ago. He was a little bit late, but I have additional copies of those if anyone needs.
From the Sinks? Mr. Sink, or who?
Mr. Zen just sent his just a moment ago, and that's from,
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
Well, we,
Yeah.
before this, we did receive 5 letters, 4 of which were in support. One expressed some concerns, and those were emailed to you. But these, I'm assuming, are all in support, is what you're saying?
That's correct. So a couple of things that were really important to us. One, the parking on our street is obviously an issue. Speeding on our street's an issue. There's 36 kids that live on our street. So we definitely wanted to make sure that we had parking behind our house and could get cars off the street. We do have 2 girls that are of driving age, so that was of importance to us. Also, we were very intentional about making sure that the water situation was handled. That's why we have worked with Twin and with the engineering firm to come up with a solution for that, so that it's it's net just where it would be before. So that was really important to us as somebody who's lived in the neighborhood for 13 years, and so that's what we're doing. And obviously, like William mentioned, we do have plans for a pool and a pool house. So we've worked really hard to try to come up with every way that we can get as much coverage with things like grass and bushes and even a little strip down the driveway. We're trying to add anything we can to get coverage and to take care of the water in the situation. So, did you sign us in? Okay. Okay, anything, man?
That's all I have. Be happy to answer any questions you have, or there's concerns. I'm happy to answer those questions.
Great, we'll open this part of the hearing to the public. Would you like to say something? If not, we close this portion of the public.
If there were any concerns, and I think there was a letter that may have had some concerns, I'd be happy to address any of those, if that matters.
One question I had, looks like this lot is also in a flood zone, is that correct?
In the very back right corner, yes. It is in a flood plain, not a floodway.
Thank you for making that clarification. In regards to your drainage system, has that been accounted for, that floodplain?
So in regards to the floodplain, really what they care about is more filling requirements so you don't affect the boundary of that floodplain. And so that would all come from a flood study the City of Homewood requires to make sure that you're not affecting that final elevation. I think the only portion of this project that sits in that is the pool house, which will be required to be at an elevation that's, I believe City of Homewood's requirements 1 foot above that floodplain max elevation.
And all those, just one other clarification, all that is part of the building permit process that will get checked off in planning during that process, so.
I was going to ask you to sign our list so I'll know
Yes.
who spoke. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments from Cale, who is obviously not here, but he sent me a text. First of all, he says he's here if anyone needs him, we can call him. And he's watching, so he can see, he can see us. It's horrible. It sounds kind of creepy. He's not watching. But he did say he's here if anyone has any engineering questions. I've seen the plan, but I'm concerned about where the stormwater will go when it leaves the site after being detained. They are proposing to daylight the discharge on grade into the backyard neighbors, and there's a structure in the backyard.
Is that something you can address?
Sure. So in our design process, I guess typical standard engineering design would be to keep the stormwater going where it is currently. And so when you do any construction, you want it to go to the same place. You don't want to move basins for stormwater. So we're discharging the same place the water is going today. And our engineered system requires, the city requires that we don't discharge any more water than is currently being discharged from the system. So we meet what's currently out there. There will be no change in the drainage pattern from what currently exists on the site.
Let me clarify, for your drainage system, as far as the basin itself is large enough to contain enough so you're not exposing all the water into the same runoff system. Is that what you're proposing?
So the water will be directed where it's currently going today, but we will detain in pipes. The pipes have been upsized throughout the entire system so that we have a controlled release. I think, can't remember, 6 or 8 inch pipe at the end. So we only let that amount of water pass through the system. So I think on our plans, there's a decrease in every storm event from the 2 through 100 year in the amount of water that's being decreased as compared to what's today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I would ask, what is the hardship that this site faces? If we're wiping the slate clean and we're then kind of looking at variances, what is the hardship that's warranting the variance?
Yeah, I mean, I think the desire for additional parking is a big one. I mean, technically, I could cut the parking, I think it's 36 feet. I could cut the driveway. We would have no additional parking. They'd have no turnaround in the back area. And I would cut the driveway off. I don't know that that's the intent or the goal of anybody to have a reduced amount of off-street parking. So I'd state that as one. And then, you know, just the desire to have the pool in the back would be another impact that obviously we're having to the property. Any other questions or concern? Again, I think the intent of Homewood's requirement is that it's a net zero impact, and again, that's why we went out and hired a outside consultant to confirm everything that's being done.
What material is the driveway?
I mean, it would probably be concrete, but again, only because there's no credits provided for permeable concrete or permeable paver systems. But that can be something that we can address.
But that's something we spoke with our landscape designer about. But just in Homewood, with our understanding is that there's not an opportunity to really do that. Well, I guess we can, but there's no, impact of that. Right, so we're happy to do that, but it's not something that we knew would be an option.
There is a credit for it, but it has to be 50%, and most people don't want to do that because it's considerably more expensive. But it's not a one-for-one credit. You get a 5% increase if you use permeable concrete or something like that for that area. You could get 5% more.
Yeah, sure.
We would be happy to proffer to put permeable pavers down just for the record. For the driveway system.
I mean, there's a definition of what the city considers a permeable paver or a surface. So, it's not something we would just, be making up. There is an actual definition for it that they would have to meet if that's something you choose to do.
Most of the systems are engineered, and obviously we can talk about that during the permit process. If it's proffered here, it would be required as a checkoff, so.
What would be the remaining coverage if you ignored the driveways?
Do you have the driveway specific on the coverage?
It would just reduce it by 5% of just that driveway section.
Yeah.
So, I think the driveway section is what, 900 square feet, is that what you were saying?
The driveway and ribbons, it says 1,360.
1,364 square feet for
Okay,
the
so
driveway and
5% of
ribbons.
that.
That would fix the 50%.
I would have to look at that, but I would,
think it'd fix the backyard coverage. I mean, if you added 1,364 to the pervious area, you'd be
No,
over 8,000.
you would just add 5% of the 1,364.
Sherry's saying per the code requirements.
The code requirements,
Yeah.
but if we treated that as grass.
If it were grass,
If it were grass,
Which is
but,
another option.
but you capped it, what you can count.
yeah. I don't think they're saying that they're gonna put in grass instead of concrete, so,
I was just wondering how much,
yeah.
like in percentage, the driveway was with the covered area.
Okay, so they would get, let's see,
Not like what they would get, just like
How much it-
proportionally. Yeah.
Like if that was now that that would be permeable, like what
No,
percentage?
I'm just saying, like, the driveway itself, just how much of that, the driveway itself puts them over 50.
What was the total lot coverage? It's 65 times 210 or whatever it is.
You got the math on that.
65 times 209.
It's a lot of math.
Okay, and then take 1,364 divided by that.
It's like 10.5%.
It's a little over 10%, I think is the question you were asking, how much of the total is driveway?
Great, so like, let's just say the driveway didn't exist, you would still be over the 50% coverage with the home, the house.
It appears
and
that
the
we would
pool.
be, yeah.
Got it.
Can I ask a question to staff? Why is a pool impervious?
It has nothing to do with impervious, it's a structure. The impervious part is a stormwater thing.
Got it.
The zoning ordinance states that 30% of the rear yard can be can be taken up with structures. It doesn't say impervious. And then 50% of the total lot can have structures. And then 50% of the front yard can have structures.
To answer your question, because I did ask the engineer that earlier, and it would accommodate a 25-year rain event, which is the requirement. However, it is considered impervious, so.
No, it's considered a structure.
It's
It's
Yeah.
a structure for the variance process, yes.
Yes.
For my
But also
calculations.
impervious for the full lot
Yeah.
coverage.
I mean, the challenge I see with this, and the plans look great and it looks awesome, is we've got 4 criteria to review a variance by, and none of those 4 seem to make a compelling case for that. I'm happy to read through them if you would like, but,
Sounds good.
I mean, it's gotta have, special conditions or circumstances that apply to the structure of the building or the land that compromise that, let's see, questions, or land in question that are particular to such premises and do not apply generally to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. In other words, there's gotta be some kind of hardship. It's a rectangle site. It's hard to make a case for a hardship for that. The second one is that the granting of the application is necessary for the preservation of the property right commonly enjoyed by all properties in the same district. I think it's hard to make a case for that as well, to go beyond what the code is saying. The third is that the condition from which relief or a variance is sought did not result from the action of the applicant. Maybe you could make a case for that, but it's hard to, again, given that it's ground-up construction. And then the last one is that the authorizing of the variance will not impair the adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property or unreasonably increase the congestion of public streets, yada, yada. I think that's fine, but you gotta meet all four of them. So, I mean, I wanna help you get what you want, but feel free to say what you'd like, but.
Was there a case in Hollywood that the variance was passed for the same thing after the property was engineered to accommodate the stormwater or the impervious, the additional groundwater?
It wasn't new construction.
Was it-
The main home was not new construction.
But that was it was a forgiveness variance.
Is yours a forgiveness? Because you haven't started, right?
No, but I'm just asking the question.
We're tasked to look at yours, we're not tasked to look at this one and this one,
I
this one.
understand.
It doesn't really work to say, well, what about this? You guys did this and you guys did that.
Ignorance is, yeah, I got you.
I understand it's frustrating. Like, I don't blame you, but you don't need to take that out on us.
Yeah.
I didn't intend to take that out on you. I'm sorry if that came across that way. I was
Yeah,
asking
I'm sorry,
questions.
it's your facial expressions. They're not
Okay.
the nicest right now.
Yeah, I would just say, understand, the different, all these issues, and we've been trying to weave and find our way through all these different, requirements. We've tried really hard to come up with a system that specifically would retain the water, because that's such a big deal. We've also tried to think about safety in our neighborhood from a parking standpoint. I would encourage you to come sit on our street and see the speeding and everything else that's happening. So putting parking behind our house is a big deal. Somebody has a 8-year-old son, there's people flying down our street. So I don't know exactly how you describe that as a hardship. I could barely understand you, so I'm not sure, but I know it's a hardship to have parking and people parking on our street. And the more people that are on our street and the cars that are there, and coming straight off Central down our street, speeding up and down our street, and we can't help the fact we have two drivers, so we have 4 cars with a whole bunch of really small children. So I think it is an issue to try to get cars off the street, and to me, it's a safety issue. So that's why we try to come up with, like, put the ribbon in there. We've challenged our the landscape architect to come up with every way to, figure out any little space to come up with that and design something that we can meet the requirements. So,
have you considered maybe eliminating the pool house or the pool so that you can have off-street parking?
So, we've considered that. Our desire is to have a pool. We have a 7-year-old son. The neighbors right next door have a
Right.
pool. And so it's something that, as we consider having our children so far apart in age, having grandchildren before our oldest child, our youngest child leaves. So it's just something that we desire to do, and think it's something that would be beneficial for our family and our neighborhood.
I guess I was just trying to.
Come up.
No,
Yeah.
I was just,
Yeah.
you have a valid point about wanting to have off-street parking. And that is very important for the safety of your children. I just didn't know if the off-street parking was as important as having the pool house or the pool, if maybe
Yeah.
you could.
So we actually started with the pool and thus the pool house kind of in mind. And then we're just kind of, that's just where our heads went first. So, and just working backwards from there.
Just to further staff's question, have y'all looked at the numbers without having the pool house?
I haven't, I'm not sure.
I saw you punch numbers pretty quickly. That's
Yeah.
not gonna be
Well,
me,
and it's
but-
something I guess we could look at. I mean, we were punching numbers as proposed. Some of this is, so the pool would be around 4%, say, something like that, of the total lot.
The pool and the pool house total would be.
Well, that would be closer to 8%.
It's about half, it was 10.
Okay.
We're around 5.5 probably.
5,
for the pool
6,
and the
yeah.
pool house total.
For total lot,
Total lot.
Correct.
but what about rear?
I don't know, do we get I don't want to state that because we don't have a rear total on this. I guess you could do the math by. I don't know, it doesn't sound, well,
Yeah, and the other point I think we were also making, I think William made that earlier, that when you look at the property now, this was 100-foot wide. Most of these lots are 50, this was 100. So we're here on that 65. So just to be clear, we're not doing the whole 100 feet. This is the 65 feet. I know that doesn't change these percentages and so forth, but just to take that into account as well.
Is the parking garage going to have a live-in structure above it, or is it just a carport?
it's currently designed with a playroom above the carport. Yeah.
So the,
What is the next bid if this were approved from an engineering water control standpoint, would there still have to be another level of review before the permitting happens? I know that the engineering work is being done to address water runoff, but I know Gail expressed his concern, but is there a?
He can't hear you. He said to turn on your mic.
And my question is there another layer of review from the city in terms of approving engineering to ensure that the water runoff is not greater than it is now?
Yeah, so I think from my understanding, the variance would be granted for the coverage only, and then we would go through our typical submittal process. You aren't approving necessarily the engineered system here. Kel would review all of it, independent of this.
Right, that was my question, just to,
Yes.
okay.
I was just asking them, if we can, what we were trying to do is design the water system to catch the same amount of water or to have the same amount of impact. So one option is to increase the design of the system to catch even more water, slow even more water down. So I guess it's a net positive effect. Is there a way to do that on there? I mean, is there, add another tank or?
Yeah,
make the-
so you would upsize the pipe. Right now,
Yeah.
we've got 15-inch. You could go to all 18-inch, and you would detain more water, so your total amount that you decrease would be less, even more so than it is currently designed.
That's something I guess we can proffer that.
Proper what?
Is the only, this is a question for staff, I guess, I don't know if it's even impossible to answer, but is the intent of the rear yard accessory structures to, is it solely stormwater? Is that set forth to protect people from stormwater or from anything else, or?
I think
And the
it's
reason I
multi-
ask is because you could detain or retain as much as you want under a structure. You know, you put a tank under it, you can do whatever and release it at whatever rate to satisfy the, you know, any calculations you need to. But if there's other reasons that exists, then it would be good to know what that is.
When it was put in place, when this requirement was put in place for the 30% rear yard, it was to protect that openness, you know, that, and not just cram a bunch of stuff in the backyard. I think that was a concern at the time. For instance, you know, and the lots in Homewood are not large.
Just as a point of clarification, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
It's not, oh, yeah. I saw the little dots come up. I wanted to make sure that, yeah, and Cal had said, it's not just a stormwater thing. It is, you know, a structure thing as well. So, yeah, you're right, because you can redirect as much stormwater as you need to. You can always come up with a way to do it, but that's not the only issue here. And that's why, you know, with detached structures, once they reach a certain height, they have to be so far from the property lines and things like that, so that you're not just making the adjacent homeowners stare at your structure. So there is a reason for doing it, other than the stormwater. And, I mean, in this case, you know, certainly stormwater is gonna be an issue too, because of the flood zone, but
Yeah, I mean, and if that is truly the case, it seems like you need to consider turf and pools separately, because those don't take up the open space like a building would, but it's all kind of murky. But,
it's still a structure,
yeah.
and it's in the code. So that's why,
It's
you
in the
know,
what?
the code is the code.
Oh, yeah.
When
Yep.
it comes to structures.
The vertical structure in this case is 431 feet of the backyard, just so y'all know. The vertical structure being the pool house. If you were to separate that out from, you know, the driveway and the pool area, it's only 431 feet of vertical structure. I know that's not the only intent of the code, and by definition, structure is structure, but
You saying 431 feet?
square feet.
Oh,
Yeah,
square feet.
431 square feet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which is a small, a relatively small fraction of the backyard, yeah.
Other questions? I make a motion to vote on SV 220808.
And that was with the proffers made of permeable pavers. I think you said you'd be willing to proffer the permeable pavers for the driveway and the parking pad in the back.
Yes.
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Workley,
No.
Mr. Alsabrook,
No.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes. Your request,
It fails.
yeah, your request has been denied.
Thank you.
adjourning.
We have the, I'm sorry, we still have the, we're talking about the
It's up
fence?
to you.
Yes.
You know, staff recommends that you wait until
All 7 of us are here.
everybody can be here and that everybody has had an opportunity to submit their comments and then we can have a more productive review.
Great, we'll move that on to the next time we're all here.
Fred, do you need a motion for that, or since it's an agenda
No,
item?
that can be a consensus
Okay.
of the committee,
have a
that we'll
consensus?
continue
We have
to the
consensus.
next
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
meeting. Right.
Are y'all done, or do I get to say something?
You can
What is this in regards to?
It's supposed to be consideration of recommended changes to the city fence and wall ordinance.
Oh, thank you for coming. We are going to be speaking about that next week.
So it's
But
It's been carried over until the September 1st meeting, but if you've, in the interim, if you've got some comments that you'd like staff
Yes, I'm Dan
to look
Campagna.
at, if you can email those or give us a letter or something, we'll have those comments.
September 1st.
September 1st, that's a Thursday,
Okay,
and in this chambers at 6 o'clock, the meeting will be, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'll get the contractor lined up and hopefully he'll be ready to go when y'all are.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
I'm sorry you
Thank you.
waited so long, I'm sorry.
I bring this meeting to an end.